mental health journey and all the things started really around like the time that I was in my preteens. I would say like I first started feeling like very angry, getting depressed, and things like that. After some big life changes, that's actually totally common. So my parents, whenever they split up, I was already like an angry kid, kind of before that, and then it just kind of got a little bit worse. That anger turned into trying to hide it. Like I tried to hide it all the time. So instead of being angry and stuff, I slowly but surely became this introverted person that was just dealing with everything just within my mind. And the thing is that when we don't have the right like skills, we don't have the way to like work through those things, then even when we're not acting out on the outside, the way we're processing on the inside does like it's not necessarily healthy for us. So anyway, so I ended up I ended up, you know, going through that for a while. I ended up getting put on medicine as I got older. I stopped taking the medicine. I actually had like suicidal attempts a couple times, and then after that, I went through a really traumatic situation like years later, where I ended up being diagnosed with post traumatic stress disorder. From being diagnosed with that, I I was looking for help wherever I could find it. Like, it's not that I was like excited to look for help, but I knew I needed it. At the time, I was like self medicating. I just stayed high all day, every day, because I just didn't want to feel what I was feeling. I didn't want to deal with what I was dealing with. And my anxiety and depression and all of that had just hit like an all time high. I ended up like completely losing my mind. Like I was like no longer present. And my husband and my family was all like, where's Hillary? Like this is like I was complicated back then, you know. I could be like hard to deal with, but this was like nothing that any of us had ever experienced. So I lost a massive amount of weight. I ended up going to three different mental hospitals. And it wasn't until after my third mental hospital that I finally, in my lifetime of dealing with mental illness, I had finally been put on meds that actually helped me. And then I finally had found the type of counseling that worked for me at the same time that I finally was surrendering everything over to God, like all at the same time. So, you know, what Kayla and I were going to be talking about is really just having a conversation about that. And I have like worked with youth students. I've worked with like I've talked to just people like younger than me, or people who maybe like would be like shy to share their story with me. And the biggest thing for me, why I share my story first, is because I'm like, hey, here's my baggage. Like, there's my junk. And now you know that there is absolutely nothing that you can tell me that you should be embarrassed about or that I would judge. Um, so something that I found recently is that for like a long time, I was like, okay, I'm healed now. Jesus healed me. I don't need meds anymore. I got off of meds within my first year of being on them, so that was like insane. And honestly, Jesus did radically heal me. He really did. But that is not the common case for everybody. And it doesn't mean that the things of this world won't still try to creep in, you know. So even though you can be healed spiritually, physically, mentally, all of that stuff, even though you can be healed, you can still face battles. And so what I want to share with y'all today is like my little thing. We were really hoping that like people would be talking with us and we would be talking back and forth, so I'm just gonna skip, I guess, right on into me talking about my tip for you, my thought to just leave you with if you're somebody who's dealing with mental illness, um, or have a friend or family member that's dealing with it. So I believe that when God created us, He created us completely perfect. Okay. And when we entered this world, that's when we stepped into sin and all of the hot mess that's here. But I believe that deep down within each of us is this person who knows who they are, who has value and all of that. And so just imagine like this perfectly white t-shirt is just like drug through the dirt. It's got stuff thrown on it, stains and all of that. And that's kind of how like we maybe end up at certain parts of our life. And what I believe is that what Jesus does is he takes that shirt and he just dumps it in some bleach. And there it is. Like it's a white shirt again. Okay, that's seriously the power of God. He removes your sin. And it's not just that he removes the sin, but he removes the things that are produced from sin. He removes the things that are just the stains of this world. And what happens a lot of times is we don't realize that maybe we grabbed another dirty shirt again and we went to put it on because something bad happened. And so we're grabbing from a closet that like we're not even supposed to grab from anymore with what we put on for that day. So say somebody at work, say somebody at your school, whatever your circumstances. So say something is said to you and it triggers something in your mind. So you go home that night and you're stressing about it, you're worried about it, you're thinking about it, and then all of a sudden the next day you realize you wake up and you didn't even like take off your shirt from the night before. So it's got like all of that on it. So what you wake up wearing is not peace. It's not just kindness, maybe, because maybe somebody like, threw you off and you're kind of angry. Like that's what I deal with. So what happens is sometimes we don't realize that we went and like grabbed that old thing. We went and grabbed that old version of ourselves. We listened to that instead of listening to, what is true. And so anyway, so for me, I went through a big transitional time where I had cut off a lot of my friends, not in like a hateful way or anything, but I had cut off like a lot of different people. Hi! I'd cut off like a lot of different people in my life. And when I did, I didn't do it because of them. I did it because of who I was, and I could no longer be her. I mean, even in my best days, I still didn't have like a healthy way of viewing life. I just didn't see much value on my life. And so I had to remove certain people from my life, just because I couldn't do the same things over and over and over. I couldn't have the same conversations. I couldn't do the same activities. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't do all of that. On top of that, I kind of had to like ask God, like, okay, what's left of me then? Like, because that had been me for so long, like all these different things. And anyway, so what I found is like I just had to like weed out some of those things that filtered into, does this sound like the Hillary I am now and who I want to be? Because I think a lot of us that deal with those struggles, and have those things pop up, it's not that we choose that. Like Paul said, he said that he's like, I do what I don't want to do, and I don't do what I want to do. And this inner turmoil, this wrestling that he was going through, that's honestly a mirror for what so many of us go through all the time, but we may just not recognize it. So we think we had a bad day, but really we were probably wrestling with the version of us that we really don't want that person to exist anyway. We want to be this better person. We want to experience a more peaceful life, a life that we can see hope, that we wake up every day and we're excited to wake up. Majority of the times whenever anxiety and depression is running rampant on you, you're not going to be excited to wake up the next day. So for me, I have had to see that it really takes just pausing each day and saying like, okay, God, like, what do you have for me today? And choosing to respond to this day throughout the day the best that I can with a different mindset than how I used to before. That 100% hands down has been the biggest part of me overcoming and continuing to overcome my mental struggles. The things that I used to struggle with, like I said, like I was healed and all of that, and I am healed. But we do live in a place that is fallen, that is broken. And so it's just like, I mean, people can take medicine for plenty of things. Like, you say you're a diabetic and you take your insulin, like, you have all your stuff, but for whatever reason, you still eat poorly, you still do all these other things. That cancels out the help that the medicine's supposed to give you, right? So it's the same thing when it comes to mental stuff. You could have the healing, but if you continue to allow these things in, like I was talking about, the things that you would weed out, if you continue to allow these things and these voices, these people, these mindsets, all these things, then your healing, it's like shriveling. It's over here being suffocated by the things that you're allowing in. So you have to stand up and say, no, like, I am healed. Even if you don't feel like it, even if you don't fully believe it yet, you say it until your heart and your mind line up to it. If you're a believer, you speak the word of God over your life, that you're a son or daughter of the King, and that He has created you perfectly, and you're fearfully and wonderfully made. Like, He orders your steps. He delights in your way. Like, I could go all day on all of that, because I have to. That's my self-talk. And two, I think a lot of people get sold these ideas of, okay, so let's like get you motivated, and here's like some self-talk and affirmations and blah blah. And while that is great, you just have to make sure that those things you're speaking over yourself are 100% truth, and they're coming from a place of truth. And I would just say, challenge yourself every day to say, okay, I'm dealing with this and this sucks. This is horrible, but here's how I want to make a change with it. Like, here's what I can do different today. Like, you ask God, like, what can I do different today? Or maybe you're not a believer and you're just like, I'm just over it altogether. You can still choose to like respond. Like, it's all about how you respond. It's all about learning your body. Like, your body tells you, like, when I used to really severely deal with my flashbacks and stuff like that, I could feel it coming, just because, like, I mean, side note really quick, part of my problem, I'm gonna have to go quick because babies are coming, but part of like what happened with me is that I was tased. I was tased in a crazy situation, and the pop of a firework could throw me into a full-on meltdown. And so this is afterwards. And so you have to learn what your triggers are, and then you have to listen to your body and recognize, okay, it's time to respond different. And you sit there and you pause until you're able to respond different. Just try your best to control that. That would be my biggest tip, is to say, remember that, like, who you want to be is truly who you are. You probably just fight with this other thing over here that's trying to convince you that you're not that you're not healed, that you're not valuable, that you're not these things, and you are. So know your worth, that you were worth the cross for Jesus, that you were worth waking up every day and showing up for, your babies or whoever. You're totally worth that. And I hope that this is just encouraging to you. I hope that you feel like you could reach out to me if you're somebody who just needs to talk. And it's time for me to go. Babies are knocking. So I hope that you just felt encouraged by this, and I will talk to y'all again. Bye.